You like crayfish? Well, the red ones, boiled, so tasty. I personally love them. It's especially cool to catch them with a crayfish trap. You can make a simple and very effective crayfish trap using a plastic box. It costs just a few cents. You can make a lot of them and set them up in the river. Now I'll show you how quick and easy it is to make this crayfish trap. In short, it's all simple. The box has two sides. This is the long side and this is the narrow side. First, we need to cut the narrow side in a P shape. We don't touch the bottom. Right here along the frame. You can do this with anything. I'll be using this kind of hand tool. I've cut that side off. This is how it turned out for me. Now it can fold inwards. If you look, it folds inwards just like that. We'll do the same with this end now. We've cut the ends for you. Now they fold up like this, inwards, like this. And now you and I need all these small parts sticking out. These ones can be simply bitten off. This can be done with the help of some tool, or you can also simply saw them off. And now our task is, we bend, and we need to saw off the frame. Here, if you look, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. That is, we will saw off this section. Like this, also in the shape of the letter P. Here, here, and here. Once we've cut the two sides, we trim the top frame. In this case, right here. Our crab trap is almost ready. We need to take our edges. Now wrap it in the middle like this. And tie them together with wire, so that everything turns out like this. I think it's all pretty straightforward here. You understood that you need to make this kind of entrance for the crabs on one side, and the same kind of entrance for the crabs on the other side. The crab trap is completely ready. As you understood by these, here are the walls. The side ones, which we now have at an angle, allow the crabs to crawl in and stay trapped inside. They won't be able to get out of there. All that's left is to tie some ropes here and lower this crab trap onto a stick or branch, or just toss it from the edge. Just lower it into the water and that's it. In the middle here, of course, you put some bait, garlic, bread, rotten fish, anything. And you can make a lot of these crab traps. Guys, and it turns out to be quite budget friendly. A very simple and effective trap. A DIY project that can be made in no time. Well, I don't know. About 5 minutes. I spent it on her. Now all that's left is to go and catch some crabs using this crab trap. It often happens that we use stoppers for fishing. And, as we know, stoppers are only good for one use. In this life hack, I'm going to show you how to use one stopper multiple times. Here in my hands is the main fishing line. Our stopper. We thread it through the fishing line. We take the fishing line and just release our stopper. From here. And it pops out like this. A stopper, guys, is a piece of rubber with a small hole inside. With a small hole that moves tightly along our fishing line and is securely fixed here. Remove the stopper in case you need to cut the tackle. Well, it's already impossible. So, going through it a second time is impossible. There's a small hole and you just can't get back in there. Now I'll tell you how you can use this stopper. A little, several times. For this, all we need is just a syringe, needle. We take our needle, take the end of the fishing line, and thread the end of the fishing line into our needle. Of course, we push all of this through from the front. We keep pushing until it pops out from here. It popped out, let's pull it. And now we carefully thread our little stopper right in the center. You need to do this very carefully with our needle so you don't hurt yourself. Suddenly you miss. We thread it, and it comes out. Our with you. With the stopper. Both of them, here it is. Now we just take it and pull the fishing line out of here. You see, when we pulled out the line, our stopper turned out to be on the needle, from under the syringe, and you can use it a few more times. Guys, well, 100%. We take our fishing line and it goes back into our needle. This is how it goes in there, with us. It goes in, we hold it. It turns out from this side, and now we just simply pull our stopper through and it ends up back on the fishing line. This way, you can use fishing stoppers. It turns out we have it again. You can use fishing stoppers, like this on the fishing line. Well, a few times. Next, I want to tell you about this. Will be a set line for pike. It's made very simply, and it's a very effective piece of tackle. I specifically found a dry branch right now, a big one like this, which we will need for this set line. I sharpened the end of the branch using an axe. We take a regular plastic bottle and tie a piece of fishing line to it, with a thick diameter of 0.4–0.5 millimeters, about 2 meters long, with a strong, good, reliable knot. Now we make a leader with a treble hook from fluorocarbon, about 50 centimeters long. It can be up to a meter, depending on the depth where you will be fishing. And we tie the other end in exactly the same way to our bottleneck. Now we take our stick from the boat or in a wading suit and go and insert it somewhere into the water. At the depth we need. As you can see, we've already completed part of the work. Now, we take the live bait and thread it onto our treble hook, right here. Alright, now let's get into the water. And we tie our set line, exactly where we think it should go. This way the tackle ends up being free, and the live bait swims around the branch. The bottle moves wherever it wants, left, right, back and forth, however it likes. You see, it keeps spinning all the time. And when the fish swims up, it grabs it. You can see the bite from a distance. You usually set up clearly more than 5 of these set lines. The chances of a bite, guys, increase significantly. It's a really cool DIY project. A float with variable buoyancy. The first thing I want to tell you, this is a float with variable lifting capacity. Now it's time for predators. We're catching it with live bait. For big ones, small ones, different kinds. And it's really hard to choose the right weight for the float. Therefore, a float with variable lifting capacity is exactly what will be relevant now. Guys, I assure you, you're going to love this DIY project. For this DIY project, we will need some kind of tool, super glue, a syringe, and an antenna. So, during my last fishing trip, the float came off. This little thing can be anything. Guys, whether it's from a float or any piece of plastic. It can be a small ampule, a pen cap, or even a drinking straw, anything. We tightly fit the needle in there. And we take out the tip, and the next thing we do is coat the needle with super glue. After that, we take our tip and thread it onto the needle. Now we take out our piston. And on the piston, at this spot, we carefully cut off this little cap. So this is what we ended up with. I found this little rubber piece. It's from a feeder net. And I tied a small piece of regular line to a swivel. We thread our line through the body of this sleeve. And we thread the swivel through all the way in here. Whoa! This way, we can fit this silicone tip nicely onto our base, the piston, and of course we coat all of this with super glue. Our float is completely ready. We insert the piston into the body of the float, and the whole point is that we can move the piston and change the buoyancy of our float. Did you get the essence of this? The point of the float is that you can make one weight and change it. Buoyancy. The piston is pushed in or pulled out. The volume inside the cylinder changes, so to speak, and our float is weighted to different degrees. I attached this float simply using 2 stoppers. It turned out to be a sliding float. You can fish absolutely anywhere and catch any kind of fish. Right now the cylinder is at full volume. It's very buoyant. We're making a cast. And let's see how it looks in practice. After the cast, our float is now in this position. So the antenna is in place, guys. This is really great. You see how it is, right? You can submerge it even more by changing, as I told you, the volume of the cylinder. We have now changed the volume of our piston. This way, the float should be positioned quite differently in the water. Yes, the antenna is lower, it's been submerged more. If you look now, you'll clearly see it on the camera. The antenna has become more submerged. So we can adjust the weight capacity of our float. Guys, it's very quick and simple. And this is live socks. To be honest, I haven't checked it, I don't know, but I've seen how men fish, in particular, on our river, and they do this little trick with their spoon. I don't know, guys. Will I have the opportunity? I'll test this life hack in practice and give you my rating on it. But for now, write in the comments what you think about it, and if you've ever done something like this. We all know this. What is a spoon bait, and at its end is a T, either red or as often as the regular metallic color. There's also a lure, here's another one, and it has a treble hook too, but you can see how they differ. If these lures, this one and this one, have this little red blade, at the end it's plastic, and here a red sleeve is just put on. Why do they do this? It's considered an additional attractant for pike. Many fishermen even say that the red hook on the spoon is special. It seems to provoke the pike to attack constantly, and because of the red treble hook, it bites better, even getting hooked on crankbaits. They remove the regular middle treble hook and replace it with a red one. Manufacturers often put these blades on, but sometimes they break off. So what's the solution? Or should we do something like this? Here's how to put a red sleeve on the treble hook yourself. If you have it, it will also serve as an extra attractant for you. Or they often wrap some thread around here. It's pretty easy to put on such a sleeve. See how well it moves back and forth? But let's imagine that there's no sleeve, and your lure just has a regular treble hook. There's one method that I've heard a lot about, but I haven't tested it myself, so I don't know about its effectiveness. This is a method using red thread. Many anglers just tie a red thread right here. Well, it turns out something like this. In the water, it all gets soaked. That's how it becomes tattered, it flaps around, and behind your lure there are these red things trailing from the treble hook. Especially these threads are effective for vertical winter jigging. When you're fishing in winter, you jig, and it creates threads that look like maggots when you pause in place. We know this, but specifically when it comes to spinning fishing, I once met a fisherman just once who did it this way, and he said that this spot works well for him. Red hook, he has a regular hook just like mine, and these kinds of threads, he was using it to catch pike. The next tackle I want to tell you about, also for catching predatory fish, is called a stretch line set. It's similar to this tackle, but it's not prone to tangling, and you can set a large number of bottles, a large number of residents. We'll need another rod and thick line, or the rope, there's no difference here. Now I'm going to set it up. The stretch line is set, so please pay very close attention to it, and carefully observe and focus on the details, and ensure you understand. Rods are important, and we place them at the distance we need. One, let's say here like this. Stronger, sturdier. Now between our rods we tie a rope. Ideally it should be elastic. It will absorb shock and work really well. We tie it higher up. You don't have to cut the edge, just throw it up somewhere. For such stretch lines, you need to choose bottles with bright labels, or stick some stickers on them, so they can be clearly seen from a distance. Now we tie our bottles with the live bait line in the same way. Our line is ready. Here it is, it's free and floats perfectly. This is very cool. The method turns out to be quite good and easy to use. We already have one bottle, now we tie the second one. Here is such a simple method of setting up. When bottles are placed directly on one stretch, usually, such a stretch is used for fishing when using 3-end. More live bait is stretched along some bank of the edging, where there is a small depth, and the bait is tied there. The advantage is that it never gets tangled because it moves around freely without reaching the poles. Tangles are completely ruled out, and you can set up a lot of live baits at once, making it a promising way to catch pike. You can easily make a loop tire from a piece of wire. We take our wire and bend it. The first time just like this. Then we bend it again just like that. We ended up with something like this. I'm going to make a big loop tire now so that everything is clear for you. You can actually make it in different sizes. Guys, on the other side we take it and make the same loop. And 2. We also bend the edge down here. This is what we end up with. Now we need to do it like this, so that the long side is higher than this one, and you can just cut off this side here. Guys, in short, we end up with something like this. If I bend it here now, we'll just end up with a rectangle where one side is longer than the other. Maybe my loop turned out a bit rough, but guys, I think it's clear to you how it looks in a larger size. Now, how do we tie a loop? We take the loop tire, and I'll show you on the cord. We take the cord like this and just make a loop. We throw it over our finger, there we go, and hold it. It turns out double once. A turn, 2 turns, you can do 3 or 2 turns. This edge here, the one we made, we throw the loop over here. We thread it through, and when we take off our loop, this little thing of ours, it turns out right here. We hold it with our hands. And we pass the loop through this little hole we have here. We drop it down through this side. Drop it. And we tighten it. And here is our finished loop. Here it is, this loop. It turns out, guys, that according to the size of our knitting loop, we can now remove it from you and me. Finished. Loop. I'll show you again how to tie a loop. We take it on our finger, thread it through twice, make a few turns, 1, 2, and then we take the free end and thread it through here. So, what about this same free end that we have now? We thread it through our 2 loops. We hold the loops and we take it off through the edge. We pull it tight here, holding this edge with our hands. There we go. And our little loop is ready. We take it off. Here it is. It's very convenient to make such loops with the help of a simple homemade loop knot. There's a wonderful way to fish with a jig using a side float. Not yet. Ice. Autumn. Perch is biting great. Last year we caught full buckets of big perch, it was all great. But if you don't have such a side float, there's always a way out. Guys, you can simply use these kinds of nipples. Now I'll tell you how to put it on. A colored nipple of a smaller diameter fits into a black nipple of a larger diameter because it fits well on the tip. The tip is good. The nipple is dark, but from a distance in overcast weather, it's very hard to see because we have a whole rod. 6 meters. Right, how can you see it with your eyes? It's hard to see this black color. Here is our colored heat shrink tubing. Here is our float, on which this heat shrink tubing fits perfectly. First of all, we take the heat shrink tubing and put it on the body. Float. Doing this, guys, is possible. It's not difficult, so the main thing is not to rush. We carefully stretch it. And we have completely stretched the heat shrink tubing over the float. And now we can easily slide it into the larger heat shrink tubing. Now everything fits easily and simply, and at the end, when we've left the desired length of red, we just slide it off the body, and we end up with the heat shrink tubing. In the heat shrink tubing you can see a little red tail, which is really cool. So, we ended up with something like this little spot. Now we're unrolling our 6-meter rod, and even at such a long length, we'll be able to keep an eye on our tip. Look how great it is! But if you look closely, the distance is just huge, and the little red dot is clearly visible. Sometimes we anglers have to fish in difficult conditions. Not in the sense that it's raining right now, but in terms of the water body. Sometimes there are really steep, sharp drop-offs, and when we cast the feeder, it gets stuck, leading to a lot of break-offs. There's a DIY thing called a feeder float. It gets caught at the top of the line. Friends, I honestly have never used such floats. But if you write in the comments, Seryoga, test this float and catch with it, I will definitely do it. So, right now I'll tell you how to assemble this float and how it works. So, we take an ordinary bottle and cut off a small piece from it. We need to cut out, but somewhere. It should be about 7.5 centimeters wide and around 10 centimeters long, guys. This is it. A rectangle made from our plastic bottle. Now our task is to make 2 holes in this piece of plastic, one here and the other here, but that is one here and the other. Here it is necessary to do it in such a way that the hole is not sharp. If we just poke through, the edge will end up being sharp. For this, we take our lighter, heat up our pin, let's say, until it's really hot so that it can melt through our plastic. We heat it up, I think that's enough, and we make a small hole. One here and the other one right here. This DIY project acts like a sail for a tackle type called Carmack. This is what a Carmack looks like. This is a spring, a bead, and there's a leader line going there. How to make a Carmack. Me too telling you. Here's a link to the video on how to make a Carmack rig for catching carp fish. I'll leave the details about catching crucian carp, and bream in the description below this video. But now I'll tell you what a sail is and how it's used. When using heavy feeders, especially like this one, while fishing in areas with ledges, you often get snagged while reeling in the fish. This is the sail that we just made. It attaches right here to the line, like this, in front of the feeder. And when you reel in, thanks to this sail, the feeder moves more easily through the water. It kind of floats because of that. Your rig, and that's it. These holes are needed to thread the line through here. Our sail, the fishing line, we thread it through here. We bring it out from the other side into our sail in exactly the same way. We insert it so you can adjust the sail on the line higher or lower. By itself it won't slide. Since the fishing line is threaded from different sides, guys, you can adjust it. And to this end of the fishing line, we tie the feeder back on. So overall it looks something like this. The sail, that can be adjusted. Our feeder, and this is how it all looks. Or on the contrary, the feeder and then the sail. I think the method is clear. And making this sail is quite simple.